All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Winston Tang. I'm an editor and writer with the Tech in Asia Studios team. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Ultimate Growth Solution for Mobile Apps, a keynote session held in collaboration with AppsFlyer, a SaaS mobile marketing analytics and attribution platform. So over the next 30 minutes, we'll deep dive into the current trends in the mobile advertising and marketing landscape and discuss how companies can take advantage of these trends to better engage their audiences through their mobile marketing channels. We have here with us today Varun Budiraja, Southeast Asia Account Executive at AppsFlyer, and he's here to talk about all of that, as well as how marketers can maximize growth for their mobile apps and successfully navigate a privacy-first digital marketing landscape. Varun, very good to see you.
Thank you, Winston, for such a lovely introduction.
All right, so one last note to the audience before I hand the time over to Varun. If any of you have any questions, during his session, during his presentation, don't be shy, just put them into the Q&A tab and we'll get to as many of them as we can after Varun is done with his presentation. Okay, so that's all from my end. Varun, if you're ready, the stage is yours, man.
I am ready, sir. Let me share my screen. So thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you enjoy the next 30 minutes of the session where we talk about how you can grow your mobile app. Now, let's start with a very quick introduction about myself. My name is Varun Budiraja. I am the account executive for Southeast Asia at AppsFlyer. And at AppsFlyer, our mission is to enable brands to deliver a seamless customer experience and make better marketing decisions. Now, let's look at a bit about AppsFlyer before we start with our presentation. We're a leader in the mobile attribution and measurement space. We've got 20 offices globally and about 78% market share in Southeast Asia. What that means is that we get to work with some of the best brands across the industry, whether it's in finance, like Citibank, Standard Chartered, DBS, e-commerce, Lazada, Shopee, delivery, logistics, Grab, and Agoda, etc. Now, let's start by talking about a very big number, $1.8 billion. This was the total ad spend that was measured in 2020 during the year of pandemic. A big number indeed. But when you look at this growth, in 2021, the number rose up by almost 100% to $3 billion US. Now, for those of you listening in, this is the size of an economy around the world. That's how big and the amount of ad spend that was measured in this year. Now, another trend, if we look at how these growth actually came from, when we look at non-gaming apps, this trend was relatively flat throughout the year. We did see some spikes during the summer season where the growth went up from 4% to 7%. But all in all, apart from these fluctuations, the trend pretty much stayed flat throughout the year. The majority of this growth, though, came from the finance apps that grew almost 4 times from the beginning of 2021 all the way till middle of 2022. Now, rising rates in CPI and overall concerns with retention also moved marketers to focus a lot on retargeting. And when we talk about retargeting, this is the ultimate way for you to maximize the lifetime value of your existing customer. We saw these trends almost go up by 5 times from the beginning of 2021 all the way up till mid-2022 as well. Another thing that really changed because of the pandemic was how customers are actually experiencing brands across the board. Now, if you were like me, I was driving to my work every single day before the pandemic, and it was that billboard on, next to my office that had always grabbed my attention. It was always that place, the signals where I get stuck in traffic, which would always caught my attention. But all of this really changed during the pandemic, right? Where consumers had more choices in terms of where they could experience your brand. But most importantly, one screen that actually emerged as an ultimate winner was mobile phones, where each consumer's overall time spent on their devices increased fanatically as well. Now, at this stage, all the companies that are actually winning in this complicated world of consumer experiencing brands everywhere, they were doing 3 things right. Number one, they were winning over all of their existing customers. And when I say winning over the existing customer, what I mean is getting all of your users to actually have a mobile app in their devices. And they did that by using multi-channel deep linking. The second thing they did was they automate the entire experience of user engagement, whether it was activating your customer that just installed the app and didn't sign up, whether it was a customer that was dormant for the last couple of months that needed activation so that they could come and buy more from you. That increased as well by simply automating the entire user engagement funnel. And last but not the least, all these marketeers and these brands were also making sure that they're getting the right audience in place before they even plan their user acquisition activity to get those new audience to come and enjoy their mobile app as well. Now, what role does the data play when it comes to measuring growth and overall engagement? And at this stage, I'm going to give you some interesting KPIs that a lot of you might be already familiar with, and some of you might be actually trying to set up these different KPIs. So let's look at those closely as well. The number one, and something that is very close to my heart, which is return on experience, where how do we measure the overall business impact that we're getting by improving the customer experience in how they're engaging with the brand. And we're going to talk a lot about this particular KPI through the next 30 minutes, but that's one of the first ones. The second one is the overall repeat purchase rate. Now, number of customers who actually come back and repurchase from your brand after making their first purchase, or in other words, known as RPR. The third is CRR, or customer retention rate, which reflects nothing but the overall percentage of customers who remained with you and who remained loyal to the brand over a specific period of time. Then customer acquisition cost and customer lifetime value, the two metrics which really help you understand the ROI that a marketing campaign or a specific marketing spend is delivering for the business. And lastly, the customer loyalty index, which you can measure by taking into consideration things like NPS score, upselling, and overall repurchasing behavior from your existing customers as well. Now, this is not all of the KPIs, but these are some of the most important KPIs that most efficient marketers around the world are really paying attention to. And some of these KPIs, in fact, actually all of them, is something that your mobile measurement platform can actually help you identify so that you can see whether you're doing good or bad against these KPIs as well. Now, I promised that I'm going to talk a little bit about return on experience. So let's talk about this particular concept itself. But before I explain this concept, just be with me and try to think of yourself as a taxi driver. Now, as an app marketer, or in this case, a taxi driver, your job is very simple. You need to drive your customer from their current location all the way to their desired destination. And in this case, our mobile app, where their current location might be anywhere. It could be an email campaign that they receive. It could be an SMS campaign. It could also be an ad that they saw perhaps on any of the ad networks, and their destination in this case is their mobile app. Now, what is the challenge when it comes to driving these customers to the destination? Well, you could either drive them to the wrong destination, or you could also drive them to the right destination, but perhaps by taking certain detours by the time your customer gets there. What will happen in that case? Your customers will probably drop off halfway through the ride, or perhaps give you a poor rating in case they actually reach the destination by taking those detours as well. Now, what is the solution here? The solution is return on experience. And return on experience is nothing but a holistic approach to understanding and increasing your customer value, your investment across your entire customer experience. Now, to increase the return on experience, your mobile customer experience plays a huge role here. And the CX, it needs to be contextual. There should be a sense that your users know where they're going, which ultimately creates trust with them. It should also be personal. Your users should be feeling that they're getting a unique experience, which is tailored exactly for them, so they feel special. Everybody likes to feel special in any time. The other two things are, it needs to be private to make sure that your user can choose what personal data they want to share with the brand and which details they want to keep private. And lastly, but the most importantly, it needs to be smooth. The journey should be so flawless that your users won't even recognize that they've been taken through a different touch points before they actually reach their destination. So all in all, your starting point, which is the place where you're supposed to pick up your customers, could be anywhere. It could be your own website. It could be an email communication. It could be an SMS. It could be a QR code. All we need to do as marketers is to make sure that our customers are being dropped off at the right place, which is specific page within the app. Now, what is the technology that you can use to actually improve your return on experience? Well, the technology behind all of these experiences is deep linking. And in sense, it's a very simple concept where your user might be engaging with the content somewhere outside the app. And once they click on that particular engagement or a campaign, they are going to be taken to a specific content within the app, the reason why they clicked on the ad in the very first place. Now, the way it works is really simple. If your customers already have the app installed in their phone, the link is going to take that customer directly to a page within the app where they're supposed to be landing by following this journey where they simply go click on that link and seamlessly gets redirected to the app content itself. Now, the problem and the challenge happens when the customer does not have the app. Now, this is where we use deferred deep linking, where we are deferring this entire journey by first taking that customer to a relevant store. It could be Play Store or it could be App Store, depending upon what device type your customers are using. They install the app, and once the app is installed, we're able to then take that customer to that very specific page within the app itself. Now, all of this is basically increasing your customer experience, and as brand marketers yourself, you're basically going to enjoy much, much higher conversion rates as well. Now, the question that often get asked at this stage is, okay, ROX is a great concept. We want to start looking at that. But how do we really measure ROX? Well, the formula is really simple. You look at the overall incremental revenue that is attributed to all of these special experiences that you're creating for the customers. You divide that by the cost of experience, which in this case could either be, let's say, the SMS communication that you're doing, the tools that you're leveraging to basically drive this experience. And that is how you essentially come out with your overall return on experience. Now, good concept, something that has been picking up very largely in our industry, but for specifically marketers that are on the session today, let's try to see what are some of the use cases that you can implement in your industry to actually have better experiences for your customers and overall enjoy a better return on those experiences as well. So for shopping, something what we've seen that's picked up a lot, and this has been ever since the beginning of the times when shopping came online, is cart abandonment. Now, if you're like me, I don't mostly buy a product without either consulting my friend or my girlfriend. And that's the time where I'd procrastinate and probably leave items in the cart, even though I'm already interested in them and I've perhaps made up my mind as well. But I'm waiting for that validation. And in between, the brand that I left the product in the carts for, they could perhaps automate the entire communication via email, where I get an email communication talking about the products that I've left in my cart that instantly create a connect with me. And at that stage, the moment I click on that link, I'm able to actually go directly to the shopping cart where I can simply check out and actually make that purchase happen. Now, it's a simple setup where you need to simply integrate your email service provider with your deep link, right? Make sure there's a template already created for these abandoned cart users. And with the entire automation, you'll be able to actually increase your lost sales, increase re-engagement, get more lifetime value from your customer, and overall reduce the abandoned cart rate as well. Now, we have a lot of our customers already running some of these experiences as well, where we've seen average re-engagement conversion rates up to of 16% and average click to install rate of up to 27%, specifically in the shopping category. Now, when it comes to finance category, things get even more interesting, where last couple of years, we've seen a lot of fintech brands and now even newer digital banks that have come in the ecosystem where they're heavily relying on digital onboarding. Now, you don't need to visit a bank branch to open an account. You could do all of that simply on your mobile device by even doing things like KYC process all within the app itself. But the challenge that marketers in the finance category are facing is overall abandonment of this activation process. Now, if you are familiar with some of the KYC processes that are out there, you're required to actually fill in a lot of information and sometimes also attach certain documents such as your national ID, your bank statement, etc. And a lot of time, customers might actually abandon this process and maybe in the hopes of returning it back to later, perhaps they were at their workplace at that time. Now, for finance marketers, you can simply automate this entire process by basically setting up an SMS automation platform powered by deep linking, where once your customers leaves that process, they're able to get an SMS which specifically talks about the fact that, what they could benefit for basically finishing the KYC, perhaps higher interest rate, perhaps higher engagement from there. And once they click on that link, you're able to take them directly to that KYC page or perhaps a process page where they abandon that particular process. Now, what should be the expected outcome from such an experience? You can increase your completion rate, which means more active customers. You can win back the customers that you thought were not going to actually come back and use your services, and overall increase the lifetime value as well. Now, with this simplified use case implementation, we've seen open rates that have been up to 82%, which means 8 out of 10 users that you're sending this SMS to will perhaps open that SMS. The response rate has increased to 45%. And overall, 60% of these responses are coming within the first 3 minutes of user actually receiving these SMS. A quick pro tip here. Try to target users in the evening when they're at home, have access to all their documents, and perhaps in their free time, they could finish that KYC process as well. Lastly, for food delivery apps, one other challenge that we've seen is a lot of brands come to us and they tell us that our consumers still don't have our mobile app. And most of the time, they're simply placing food orders on through mobile web itself. Now, in this scenario, in case you want to migrate your customers from the mobile web to mobile app, implementing a smart banner might be the right recipe for you, where when your customers are browsing the mobile web, they can simply see a banner that talks about why an app experience is better, or perhaps any benefits that your customers can get once they actually download the mobile app. And a simple click on that will take the customer to the relevant store, so either Play Store or App Store, and then within the native app where they can actually sign up and become a more engaged users as well. Now, when our food tech or food delivery apps have implemented this particular experience, we have seen their customer acquisition cost go a lot down, because at the end of the day, this is a user that's already been using your services. They're already familiar with your UI on your mobile web. All we need to do is get these customers from mobile web to the mobile app, thereby not really paying any ad network for this acquisition. We've seen conversion rates go much, much higher, because now that you have a customer who has an app in their phone, you can obviously engage with them much faster. You can send push notification, you can communicate with in-app messaging, etc., and thereby increasing your conversion rate. And obviously, all of this has a direct impact on the lifetime value of your customers as well. Now, some of our customers who've implemented this use case have seen their day 7 retention rate to be upwards of 20%, and overall conversion rates from web to app also increased up to 25% as well. Now, if you are the marketers who are keeping close eyes on all of your different data points as well, these are some of the benchmarks that you could look at and see how good or bad you're doing, and how you can overall improve these numbers by implementing some of these experiential use cases for deep linking. Now, talking about the experience, one thing which is an elephant in the room that we cannot really avoid, which is the overall challenges with privacy. Now, for those of you who've been in around the ecosystem a long time, you know that this last decade has been I would say not even a decade, but probably 2 decades, have been actually instrumental in changing how consumers are basically being given preferences for privacy, where consumers can decide what data they would like to share or not share with the brands. And you can see all of the different compliances, different laws that have come around since 2000. First one being COPPA, then GDPR, CCPA, and most recent one being changes that came with iOS 14, where now for every iOS user as a brand, you need to take their consent even before you can collect their IDFA, and in turn basically impact the measurement as well. Now, let's look at a bit in terms of what are the privacy regulations that have come, and what are the challenges that these privacy regulations are actually posing to the advertisers such as yourself. Number one, the campaign setup have become a lot more complex now. If a lot of you are advertising or marketing to iOS users, you would know that setting up that consent prompt, which is the ATT prompt, that's become a huge challenge as well, where advertisers are finding difficult to know what is the right time to really ask customer for this consent itself. Similarly, things like SK Ad Network, which is an iOS solution for attribution, also comes with its own limitations, where all of the measurement that you can do, you're required to split that between the 6 bits options that SK Ad Network gives you in a sense. The second bit is that data sharing is also becoming a lot more restricted. Now, we've seen with our data that only about 46% of the iOS users are actually consenting to share their IDFAs with different brands that they're working with. What that means is that approximately over 50% of your customers, you do not have their advertising ID, which means it becomes difficult for you to also perhaps retarget these customers and share this data across the different ad networks that you might be working with from an optimization perspective. And lastly, data fragmentation overall makes your analysis a lot harder. Now, there's user level data, there is aggregate data, and all of that varies. There is SK Ad Network data, and there is non-SK Ad Network data, which further makes your life a lot complex, because there might be duplication in the data that you're looking at as well. So these are some of the challenges that our marketers are facing today. And this is exactly the stage where AppsFlyer comes in and makes your life a lot easier. Now, at the beginning of the session, I mentioned that we are a mobile attribution and measurement platform. But really, the way the brands are using AppsFlyer today is to really grow their business. And every single time we talk about business growth, there are only two ways to achieve that growth. Either you get your existing customers to buy more from you, or you acquire new to brand customers. Now, in this case, for new customers, we essentially give you an attribution solution that could help you understand the performance of your different ad campaigns, both from mobile as well as from your web campaigns, thereby helping you understand two very important metrics for your business: customer acquisition cost and their lifetime value, so you can easily understand the ROI that your marketing campaigns are generating for you. On the existing user side, the very first step is to understand what is the audience that you're basically going after, right? Which means segmenting your customers based on their behavior within the app, right? And complement that by our universal deep linking solution means that every single time your customers are engaging with your brand, they're having a seamless experience all the way within the app itself. And last but not the least, we also make your SDK app maintenance a lot simpler, where we're giving you access to close to 11,000 plus media and tech partners, which means AppsFlyer SDK acts as a universal SDK, and you do not need to implement all of these different solutions in case you want to, you were relying on these SDK from a measurement perspective. So that's all from my side. I hope this was a useful session for you guys and gave you insights into how you can shape up your overall mobile strategy in this age of privacy.
All right, thank you so much, Varun. I think that was a very insightful presentation. Learned a lot there. I want to keep this learning momentum going because can we jump straight into the Q&A? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Okay. To the audience, if you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in. It's not like, we have closed shop there, right? Okay. So first up, towards the end there, you mentioned, Varun, something about the privacy landscape right now. Data collection is a lot more complex now. In your experience, right, in AppsFlyer's experience, right, how do you see brands coping with this evolving privacy landscape? And do you think data collection and how it's done will change in the future?
Yeah, absolutely, Winston. I think to answer this question, the very first thing we need to understand is what has really changed in this whole privacy ecosystem, right? The very first thing is that for a consumer, the ecosystem or their experience with brands is a lot more private, right? Which means they give the consent whether they want to be tracked or not to every single brand they're experiencing, right? From an advertiser side, though, it becomes a huge challenge because now they don't have that user level data to basically rely upon. So the very first thing that a lot of successful brands are doing today is not really relying on user level data and having that mindset shift to rather rely on more aggregative data. And rightly so, because there is not a single brand in the world that actually take marketing decisions based on individual users. You always look at a cohort of users, how their behavior is, so that you can essentially then predict the trends and essentially also look at how you want to treat this user in the long term as well. Something else that a lot of these successful brands are doing is relying on predictive analytics, right? We understand that those early indications that we get from SK ad networks and other solutions are generally limited in terms of what kind of data that you can measure during those early days of engagement. So having predictive analytics in place essentially means that even with those limited engagement touch points that you got at the very beginning, you're able to still take decisions on the overall lifetime value of that customer and then decide whether you want to spend more money on this customer or perhaps this will not be a high value customer for you.
Okay, all
Those
right.
would be some of the things.
Okay, awesome. All right, next question. We have one from Vigneson who is asking, it's a very practical question. We have a new app. Now we need to market it. How can AppsFlyer help?
So in case you want to market your new app, I would say, first of all, start with talking to all the people who've kind of, already shown any interest. I don't know if you guys are already running any guest lists or not, but usually that's the best way to get those early adopters, or so to say, the people who have shown interest, get them to start getting your app. But from a measurement perspective, I think as soon as you start to get those paid advertisements in place, like for example, if you're spending money on different ad networks, that's the right time to have something like an AppsFlyer tool in place, because not only will give you feedback on your early adopters in terms of how they're using the app, what's their retention rate like, what are the points that they're basically dropping off, for example, and help you really make decisions around what should be my ideal customer acquisition cost and what should be the lifetime value, so that when you do pour in more marketing dollars, you have set benchmarks and you're overall running a profitable marketing business.
Okay, okay. Vincent, I hope that was a good, comprehensive enough answer to your question. I guess on that, earlier in the presentation, you also mentioned about return on experience. I like that term because, it really cuts to the core, right? When we market, you want to make sure someone enjoys themselves, basically, not just, tell them things, and you just want to get them involved. So on a similar note, right, what are some best practices to increase opt-ins and create this very engaging mobile channel experience for users?
I think that's a great question and something that all marketers have been asking themselves the last 2 years also, ever since Apple announced its change. I think the very important thing to remember here is that each time we are asking our customers, right, as brand marketers to really give that opt-in to us, that is the stage where we need to identify where do we ask them this question, right? Should it be at the very first day when the customer downloaded the mobile app, or perhaps it should be a time when customers are really engaged with the brand and this is not an app that they can live without, right? So that's the very first things that brands need to keep in mind, that at what stage do you want to show that consent to get the IDFA from that customer. The second important thing is also have a pre-ATT prompt, which is not an Apple's prompt, but rather a prompt that, brands can develop themselves, right? Where they tell the companies, they tell their consumers that this is the reason why they should give the consent. And based on their choice, essentially show them the actual ATT prompt, which can also help you increase the ATT rates as well. One thing we need to always remember that we only get to show the ATT prompt to our customer once. If they say no, we don't have a way to go back to them again. So brands need to very carefully decide what is the right time and what is the right messaging that they need to do before they collect that ATT prompt.
Okay. All right. We have another question from Shanison Lin, and they're asking, since iOS 14.5, how does the Ask app not to track consensus affect the advertising revenue for ads? Are brands still allowed to show ads from third-party ad platforms like Google Ads, and how does that, how can they still keep monetizing using ads?
So Shanison, that's a very good question. If a customer or a consumer of the app is saying no to track, what basically that means is that they are not giving their consent for you to collect their advertising ID. Okay. The effect of that advertising ID missing means that you're not able to understand what channel got this customer to download the app in the very first place. So you will have overall challenges with understanding the performance of the campaigns. At the same time, if you like to retarget this user, you will also have challenges there, because if you don't have the identifier, you cannot also communicate with different ad networks and tell them that this is the user that you would like to retarget, perhaps for activation or re-engagement purposes.
Okay. Vincent has a follow-up question to how you what you answered previously. Basically, it boils down to, if they were to engage a digital agency that is able to also give them analytics, where does AppsFlyer come in? What is the basically the USP that you guys can provide that maybe others don't?
So it's a good question, Vignesh, from your side. So generally, when we work with a lot of different customers, they also have a media agency that works in parallel with them. And in most cases, the media agency would be the one that will likely be running campaigns for this customer. And most often than not, they also rely on AppsFlyer to give them this analytics for the performance of the marketing campaign. So whether it's app install campaigns, whether it's re-engagement campaigns, you can choose to give your agency also visibility in case they are running these campaigns for you, and they can report that data either back to you, or you can also look at the performance of the agency directly from the dashboard. But generally, agencies don't also have their own tool to kind of do this measurement of different campaigns. They would also rely on a tool like AppsFlyer to essentially make their decisions.
Okay. All right. Okay, this next question, a little bit of looking into a crystal ball here. Okay. What are some of your predictions, right, for mobile ad marketing trends based on what you're seeing happening nowadays?
So I think, Winston, it is a crystal ball question. I've been in the industry now for almost a decade, so perhaps I've seen a lot of different trends, follow through. One thing I can definitely say is that this is not the end to privacy changes. I think, you've seen lately also a lot more breaches happening around the world. With the economic time also, it's not the best time right now. We've seen different changes happening because of wars, interest rates, etc. So fraudsters have a lot of incentive right now to steal marketing budgets. Right. So I do see fraud trends going up in the next couple of months as well, because wherever there is money, there's going to be fraudsters. So that's one thing I definitely see going up. So if you are running campaigns right now where you don't have a right fraud protection in place, please go and try something there, because you might be losing money to fraudsters a lot. The second thing is that as more and more privacy changes keep coming, I think companies like AppsFlyer, we need to also reinvent in terms of what are the kind of tools that we're giving to our advertisers and to our customers, whether it's, privacy cloud with data clean rooms, where you can essentially put all of your first party, second party, third party data, make better decisions from there without actually having to compromise on user security and their privacy. So those are, I would say, some of the tools also that you'll see more and more coming in the industry in the next couple of months, because at the end of the day, marketers still need data to make decisions, right? But it needs to be done in the right way by making sure that our customers trust us, and also doubling down on all of your security and privacy practices also, because fraudsters are everywhere. There are leaks happening, fraudsters are stealing budgets. So we need to be mindful that, we are not bleeding our cash overall.
Okay, so those are obviously very practical concerns, right? Security is a massive part of all this. But I also want to find out a little bit more, like, do you think brands will change how they, give a better experience to the mobile users? Is there anything coming up that could affect how they change or even enhance, right, how they reach out to users?
Absolutely. I think I've seen a lot of, ever since the beginning of the ATT introduction, we've seen brands kind of reinventing the way they're engaging with their customers. 2-3 years ago, we didn't see a lot of web campaigns, especially for companies that had an active mobile app. But now a lot of brands are actually focusing on getting their customer first to their website, where they kind of give them the understanding about what this product really does and all the use cases, and then taking them to the App Store to get them to download the app vis-a-vis a direct kind of, web to app, for example, user flow. And what this basically does is that your users are very well informed, right, about what are they really getting themselves into, because at the end of the day, app install is a commitment, right? It requires space on your phone, it requires data. So that's one thing. The second thing also is that the moment you're able to bring your customer to your own website, and then from website to the app, this becomes your first party data. And essentially, then you don't have to live with the limitations of measurement as well, because it's first party data that, you're bringing essentially into your app as well. So these are some of the changes from overall engagement point that we've seen brands kind of implement. But like I said earlier as well, I think the mindset is what's really changed, and what's changing as we speak as well. The whole reliance on user level data is slowly diminishing, and having those better cohorts to take marketing decisions. And I think something that's really cropping up in the industry right now.
All right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a kind of a relief of sorts to people, to users as well, who might have been, spent the last couple of years worried about where's my data going, where's my personal information going, and so on. So being able to serve a experience that's engaging, it's personalized, without having to sacrifice that kind of privacy, I think that's a very, very bright future ahead of us. Okay, so actually on that note, that's all about all the time we have for today. Varun, thank you so much again for coming on, sharing all your insights and answering all those questions.
Thank you, Winston and Tech-Anesia team, and thanks for everyone joining.
All right, yeah, and as Varun just said, thank you everyone at home or wherever you may be for joining us today. Until the next event, please stay safe and take care.